Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. My name is Jin Jin, the moderator for today's event. Welcome to join us at China's Philanthropy Conference and launch of China Issue Guide series. On behalf of the hosts, the Center for Asian Philanthropy and Societies, and China Development Research Foundation, we'd like to extend our gratitude to the following guests for joining us. They are Secretary General, China Development Research Foundation, Fan Jing; Ronnie Chen, co-founder and chairman, Center for Asian Philanthropy and Society; Chief Rep in China for Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Dr. Zheng Zhijie; co-founder and CEO of CAPES, Dr. Ruth Shapiro; acting director of Ford Foundation, Madame Gu Qing. In the same time, we'd like to say thank you to other panelists. Huang Haoming, Vice Dean of CGPI, Senior Program Officer of Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Madame Hao Ruixi, Board Member of Taikang Yicai Foundation, Dr. Li Mingqiang; Chen Yuhong, Secretary General, Beijiao Charity Foundation; Madame Zhang Zhen, Secretary General of Reitz Foundation; Madame Chen Yimei, Secretary General of Vank Foundation; Fang Zhi, Vice Secretary General of China Environmental Protection Foundation, as well as Dr. Yang Biao, Vice Secretary General of Sea Foundation. Welcome to you all. In addition to research from the insiders, we also intend to issue the latest research report on the China Issue Guide series, 2 volumes covering health and environment in China. They will focus on the social capital investment and philanthropy landscape in China. Several insiders from the industry will also join us in the panel discussions on their insights on health philanthropy and environmental philanthropy. Today's launch online will be provided with translation and simultaneous translation. If you need any service, please use the Zoom toolbar for the simultaneous translation. In the same time, our launch today is broadcasted by Phoenix Philanthropy Channel. Please stay tuned. Without further ado, I'd like to open today's conference properly. First and foremost, let's give the floor to Secretary General of China Development Research Foundation, Fan Jing, to open this conference, who will be speaking on the role of philanthropy in common prosperity. Hand over to you. Thank you to the moderator, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I am very happy that today CDRF, together with CAPES, has hosted today's China Philanthropy Conference and launch of the China Issue Guide series. We all know that philanthropy in China is booming, which played an increasingly vital role in China's economic and social development, with the theme of action for the greater good. Through the research and communication on the key hotspots areas for China's philanthropic sector, we will definitely arouse more attention from the entrepreneurs and general public's attention on philanthropy, promoting philanthropy to play a greater role in common prosperity and socialist modernization. I also would love to talk about my personal take on common prosperity. Common prosperity is the nature of socialism system, either for the preliminary stage or the developing stage for socialism. Liberating and developing productivity, enabling people to live a happy life through common prosperity, has always been the ultimate goal of the Chinese Communist Party and Chinese government. With concerted efforts, China now stands as the second largest economy, with our per capita in 12,000 USD. Soon to be a high-income country, we have successfully realized the first Sentinel goal, realizing a moderately prosperous society. We have eradicated absolute poverty, and we're now moving to reach our second Sentinel goal, which is to become a society with common prosperity. Given that background, Chinese government has deployed series of strategy on common prosperity. In the 5th session of the 19th NPC and 14th five-year plan, the government proposed that real concrete efforts must be made toward common prosperity. State Council and the central government has also issued a document on supporting Zhejiang as a demonstration zone for common prosperity. The Financial and Economic Commission 10th session has particularly studied on common prosperity with concrete policy and guideline. According to the Financial and Economic Commission, people-centric mindset must be adored to promote common prosperity, and the country should deal properly the relationship between fairness and efficiency through primary distribution, secondary distribution, and third distribution. We should formulate a systematic arrangement to promote fairness and equitable society. From that document, we could tell that Chinese government has already given a full, very important mission for the third distribution, which is engaged on philanthropy. Primary distribution relies on market to solve the issue of efficiency. Then secondary distribution mostly rely on government power to solve the issue of fairness. Then the third distribution must rely on the power of virtue and voluntary giving. That is a very important supplement to the first primary and secondary distribution, as Cape's report indicated, that philanthropy and its expenditure is a very important direction and a very important complement to Chinese societal development. However, even though the growing number of charitable giving in China, however, the overall volume is still very, in the year 2020, the charitable giving amounted to 200 billion RMB, where our GDP stands at 102 trillion. Our financial expenditure, 24 trillion. That means the primary distribution and secondary distribution is 501 times and 120 times of the third distribution. So how do we better play the role of philanthropy and charity given that dynamic so that more people, wealthy individuals and enterprises can increase their charitable giving to support the disadvantaged groups to solve social issues? Most critically, if these charitable givings are being well utilized, they can promote efficiency, fairness, maximize the value of philanthropy to promote common prosperity. I'd like to give you an introduction, a case from our foundation. In the year 2007, we started our project on the nutrition improvement program for the impoverished regions. With social experiment methodologies, we have proved the importance of hot meals to the children's well-being. The relevant findings was reported to the central government and later become a national policy. We spent 10 million on this pilot project, but once becomes national policy, the Chinese government has invested in more than 200 billion in this project. Last year, we have done a secondary assessment on the implementation of this program with our important report. We suggest the government subsidy being improved from 4 yuan per day to 5 yuan per day. This policy guideline was also adopted by the government. Then, from last fall, the government every year will increase 8 billion investment, with our assessment only cost 1 million. We also had done a calculation on the long-term return of that project. With 1 yuan invested by the country, it will generate 5 yuan return, mostly through extending the pupils' education as well as improving their physical well-being. Therefore, I believe that leveraging the secondary distribution and improving the primary distribution, this project will really maximize the value of philanthropy. With the successful pilot and that project, we also started a series of other social projects, including the Infant Nutrition Package, China Reach, Village Early Education Center. These projects, some have become national policy, some are now been replicated, some are still in its infant stage. In addition to children's development stage, we also try to carry out more pilot studies on health and well-being support, ecological restoration. Hopefully, our pilot study could provide some findings for the national government. We're very happy to note it from the CAPS report that such social innovation has been carried out by many foundations in China through pilot study. They work out a replicable model for the government for mass promotion. That means philanthropy in the process of common prosperity not only supplement public service and public policy, but also innovatively maximize the value of philanthropy. As Francis Bacon once said, knowledge is power. Without any doubt that CAPS, what they have to on the landscape study in philanthropy sector in China is very vital for practitioners, donors, and policymakers to help them to make scientific and rational decisions to promote the prosperity of China's philanthropy. We're very, very happy to see that with the leadership of Chairman Ronnie Chen, CAPES will engage in more meaningful studies, and CDRF will proactively participate in these studies. I know that many of the reps from the foundations today who joined the conference will work hard with all of us insiders to promote philanthropy development in China so we realize common prosperity. I wish this conference a grand success. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to Mr. Fang for the remarks. With economic development, wealthy individuals in China explode with the booming of philanthropy. How should we properly understand the philanthropy in China? Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Ronnie Chen, co-founder and chairman from CAPES, for remarks. Welcome.
Thank you. It is my great honor to be part of this conference online. First of all, allow me to extend my gratitude to CDFR because 25 years ago, when you first established, I was part of your activities, and 1/4 of a century has passed, and you are thriving. I still remember the projects that you did in the past, and I really want to say a big thank you to everyone. I would like to thank Bill Gates Foundation, Ford Foundation, along with other supporting organizations. We know that CAPS was established in 2013 together with Dr. Ruth Shapiro. We are not only focusing on China, but also in Pan Asian areas. We are establishing cooperation relationship with 18 countries across Asia. As I said, 18 countries and regions were able to gather first-hand information. We trying to understand the market, trying to summarize the practices in those areas to come up with some very practical, protocols. And of course, cultures differ from one another in Asia, and there is no one-size-fits-all approach in Asia. And this kind of research help us to do comparison. We are not trying to say that you're good, I'm not good, but we are learning from each other. On the other hand, we are more than willing to learn from Western patterns as well, because we understand that from our understanding, the Western models excel on itself, and there's quite a lot of experiences to draw from Western practices. However, some of that is just not suitable for Asia. Therefore, we think that it would be helpful for us to understand Asian marketplace. Pardon me for the lack of better words by using market, because in this big ecosystem, what is the most important and what is most suitable and practical. I think this is something that we need to further study and try to understand better. I'd like to encourage people to make more givings by way of tertiary distribution. Just as Secretary General Fang said, that the tertiary distribution is not leveled by the government. Instead, it's leveled by the moral power. So, to what extent do you make a donation? Quantity and quality are the issues that we are looking at. So, for CAP, our hope is that we could focus both on quantity and quality, and will be able to help a successful businessman to increase the quality of their philosophy projects and also the quality of the work. So we would like to help them to make the best use of the donations that they give. We know that in China, in Chinese culture, we have this heritage. For over thousands of years, we have a habit of giving back to the society. And what worth mentioning as well is that because I am someone who traveled around the world for the past half century, and I have been deeply engaged in philosophy projects across the world. I've talked to quite a lot of givers and donors. We're friends with one another, and never had I seen any case in any country, let alone in China, in early stage of economic development, there had already been quite a huge quantity amount of rich people who donate everything back to the society or the majority part of their wealth back to the society, to those who are in need. I haven't seen any case in the rest of the world that it has such a huge amount of rich people who are giving back at the early stage of economic development than in China. So probably you already know that over the past half a century, we have a heritage. That is, we do not want to leave our wealth to our offsprings. And therefore, we sincerely wish that there will be more and more people joining us in making, philosophy projects. Over the past 200 years, China's development had underwent ups and downs. Qing dynasty. Over the past 200 years, you see that China had missed, the entire world has missed 1/4 of the entire population getting more engaged in the greater goods for the entire population. So in China, we are now in the process of renaissance, and in quite a number of areas, I believe that China will continue to play a bigger and bigger role and will be able to make bigger contribution to the entire population in terms of society development, in terms of arts and culture, and also by the latest case, the COVID-19 response for Chinese people. We've been making great contribution to the world, but something just went ignored. I truly believe that in the area of doing philosophy, in the coming couple of decades, I believe that Chinese people will be playing a increasingly vital role and set good examples to the rest of the world. Therefore, that is why we are issuing this China issue guide here in 4 areas to share the latest development experiences in 4 areas. And as a result, we believe that more people will be benefiting from the tertiary distribution and be covered by the common prosperity, not only in terms of the quality, but also in terms of the quantity. And we hope that we can work together and thrive for a better development of philosophy work. I think this is the sincere hope of the Center for Asian Philosophy and Society. The growth of wealth is the fastest, and not only in Asia but also in the entire world. So, in caps, that is why we focus our attention first in China as a market, and probably later on we could go to other countries as well. So, we'll be able to draw more comparisons and learn from one another. Again, I'd like to say a big thank you for all the participants, especially those on the internet, and I wish this launch conference a great success. Thank you very much, Mr. Nurani Chen. You just help us to understand there are various approaches to the delivery of philosophy work in China. We want to make this world a more sustainable and more, civilized one. Next up, I'm going to invite up Mr. Zheng Zhixie, who is the Chief Representative of Beijing Office of Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Well, thank you very much. Thank you, dear guests. Very good afternoon to you all, and I'd like to thank for the invitation to attend this conference. I would like to take this opportunity to share with you our experiences in the past to see how we are delivering philosophy projects in China. 2022 is a very important turning point for the global charity industry. COVID-19 has taken away millions of people and slowing down or even reversing the hard-won progress in global health and development. At the same time, the inequality of income and wealth continues to worsen and to a certain extent aggravates the public doubts about the motives and functions of charity. In face of these challenges, what are the roles and values compared with government agencies, private sector, non-governmental organizations, and charitable organizations? How can we choose to achieve the maximum influence under this condition, and how do we measure and evaluate the work of the public welfare projects and charitable organizations? What kind of mechanisms can we better use to urge the individuals and organizations to engage more in philosophy work and fulfill their responsibilities? And I believe that all these needs require active discussion from people from inside and outside of our industry. So I was invited to talk about the responsibility. So from the point of view of Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation over the past 2 decades, what kind of roles do we play? Well, actually, Bill and Melinda came to notice that there are millions of children in low-income countries die of preventable diseases every year, especially digestive diseases. So they believe that they are able to provide opportunities for those who lag behind. They are also eager to remove the barriers that prevent the poorest people from getting vaccines and treatments, therefore eliminating the inequality in the field of health and development and making everyone to live a healthy and productive life have become the goal of Gates Foundation. Since then, we have been working hard to better understand where and how the foundation can maximize its value. For example, compare with private or public funds, what unique role can charitable foundation play in meeting those challenges? In order to answer these questions, we make an analysis and study by formulating a strategic framework. We believe that compared with government, foundations can take actions faster and take more risks. Therefore, we are able to form a evidence-based methods that can be scaled up. The foundation can also make better use of innovation and delivery expenses from the private sectors to help meet the needs of the most difficult people. In practice, the role of the foundation can also change according to their comparative advantages in different fields. The internal strategy department of a foundation work closely with various project teams to sort out external partnerships and to have focus on the major areas of demand and opportunities. In responding to COVID-19, could be a very typical example. Gates Foundation has committed more than $2 billion to the global fight against COVID-19. Compared with the fund invested by the governments, this is a very small amount. However, our goal is to complement and add value as much as possible. In the final analysis, our resources are mainly used to ensure effective support for marginalized people and communities as soon as possible. My apologies. We have, just encountered some hiccup in internet connection from Mr. Zheng. Please bear with us for a minute. I'm back. I'm back. We have also been trying to help African countries to increase their testing capacity. The Foundation's deep knowledge and extensive partnership in the field of dealing with other infectious diseases such as AIDS and malaria and polio has laid a good foundations for us to fight against COVID-19. We have developed some new diagnostic tools, therapeutic drugs, as well as vaccines for COVID-19. We used equity investment and financial guarantee to encourage enterprises to obtain regular approval, willing to carry out mass production in the face of the uncertainty. We have also used cutting-edge disease modeling and analysis in existing projects to help policymakers make better decisions. The COVAX vaccine implementation plan, as you know, have provided financial support to promote the global fair access to vaccines. And we also have this African Union-led procurement plan for vaccines and medical supplies, as well as the South African Genome Sequencing Network, which successfully detected Delta and Omicron variants and so on. I have an example in China as well, how we are strengthening vaccine equity in China. Um, this foundation has a long-term cooperation with China CDC and other partners to support the HPV, PCV, as well as HIV, and rotavirus vaccines recommended by World Health Organization into China programs so they will be able to provide better protections for the public health and to enhance equity.
Now, with our partnership with the National Cancer Center, cities like Ordos, Jinan, and Chengdu have already enlisted HPV vaccine as a municipal immunization plan, providing immunization for proper people. And these efforts will benefit thousands of hundreds of people and provide valuable experience for the whole country to include HPV vaccine and other key vaccines under the National Immunization Plan. We also work extensively with research institute, vaccine companies, pharmaceutical companies, as well as governments at all levels to expand the capacity of production and control the vaccine cost. For example, the JE, Japanese encephalitis, which has cost the lives of 3 billion people, which has taken away lives of hundreds. However, in Denmark, we haven't had any affordable single-dose vaccine. However, in China, ever since the 1980s, they have a made in China vaccine that has been providing vaccination. However, it has not been authorized by WHO. Therefore, with our global partnership, we supported the Chinese vaccine producers in the year 2013. These business had received the certification on their GE vaccine. This is the first vaccine made in China that has been recognized and certified by WHO, and therefore 400 million kids from 12 countries have received protection from this vaccine. And there are other 5 made in China vaccines, including influenza, oral attenuated pillows, and inactivated polio, cervical cancer, and hepatitis A vaccines that also has passed the pre-certification of WHO. Therefore, taking this pandemic as example, no other entities could really supervise schools for stopping classes, the restrictions on gatherings, and government has absolute dominant role in mobilizing resources, where the private sector can support the continuous supply of food, medical supplies. However, responding to public emergency and making sure the equitable distribution of vaccines, testing kits, and drugs is beyond the responsibility of any organization. In the same time, we, as a part of the society, should join with one another, working with government, private sector, civic sector, and philanthropy organizations to work and make our move so that together we could help the marginalized people, disadvantaged people, and impoverished people to access to and afford these social benefits. And I know organizations like us play the role of catalyst. We inactivate the public and private sector for partnership. Sometimes foundations and philanthropic organizations can bear the responsibilities that the government cannot host and the business are not willing to shoulder. With us, with the replicable solutions we found, we could help support the government and the market to provide the solution to much needed people. That's some personal thoughts on the responsibility of philanthropy entities. That's all for my presentation. Thank you. Thank you to Mr. Zheng for the wonderful remarks. And please join me in extending our gratitude to 3 speakers so far. Now we come to another session, the launch of the China Issue Guides. In order to improve the scale and quality of Chinese philanthropy organizations, CAPES has initiated the China Issue Guides. Please now join me in welcoming Dr. Ruth Shapril, CEO and co-founder of CAPES, for a kind introduction on the guides. She will be speaking English. If you need translation, please use the translation function on Zoom.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ruth Shapiro, co-founder and CEO of CAPS, the Center for Asian Philanthropy and Society. Or you can use my Chinese name, Xia Luping, which sounds much more beautiful than my English name. I want to, before I continue, I just want to thank a number of people. Certainly, first and foremost, the China Development Research Foundation, CDRF, for being our partner and a wonderful partner and co-host for today's program. I also want to thank the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and thank you, Dr. Zheng, who I understand you go by ZJ more commonly, for those wonderful remarks. I want to thank the Ford Foundation, as well as UBS and Bangkok Bank for supporting our work. And I want to thank our terrific chairman, Ronnie Chan, who you heard from earlier just now. Ronnie is not only a great chairman, he's very much engaged. He thinks about the issues, but he also represents a very illustrious board of trustees that we are fortunate to have of leading philanthropists from around Asia. And he represents the Asian donors to the Center for Asian Philanthropy and Society. And Without our Asian donors and our Asian supporters, we could not do the work that we're doing. Lastly, I want to thank everyone who was interviewed for these studies, some of whom you'll hear from later on this afternoon. If you don't mind, I'm going to share my screen so that I can walk you through some of the findings from our 2 issue guide reports. Can you see it? Yeah, great. Okay. Many people have been looking at Chinese philanthropy, but we, like Ronnie said, we at the Center for Asian Philanthropy and Society, we do evidence-based research. We want to understand what works across Asia. What are the strategies? What are the methods? Sometimes they're going to be like the West, but many times they are not. It is not our job to judge one is better than the other. We know that there are many ways to increase impact and deliver solutions. Our job is to understand what is working on the ground. We know that China has a long history of charity and philanthropy, and we can see that in China, philanthropy has unique characteristics. In fact, we say that in China there is philanthropy with Chinese characteristics. This is not going to the next screen for some reason. Oh, there we go. Let's just look at this incredible statistic. In 2018, philanthropic donations of more than 1 million RMB amounted to more than 27.5 billion RMB, a 50% increase from the year before and almost a 4-fold increase from a decade ago. Now, just think about that. This number is huge, but it still doesn't include all the crowdfunding and all the donations made by billions of people that under 1 million yuan. So this number, although very big, is only a small percentage. Given this, it's not surprising that people want to understand what is happening with Chinese philanthropy. Our study is the most granular study of what is happening on the ground. Not only who is giving, but what are they giving it to and how are they giving it? Let's start with some statistics. You can see that the number of foundations have grown, and many people cite the growth of foundations as an example of how we know that philanthropy in China is growing. But the Chinese word Jijinhui, foundation, means sometimes different things than the word foundation does in the West. There are several different types of Jijinhui or foundations. Let me explain them very briefly. There are individual foundations. So for example, Fuyao Glass's Xiao Dewang, who we interviewed for this study, has his own personal foundation, the Heren Foundation, which does a lot of good work. There are systemic foundations, which are often referred to colloquially as GONGOs, government-operated non-governmental organizations. These are foundations that are linked to the state to a certain degree. There are corporate foundations, like Tencent foundations. There are school foundations, like the Tsinghua University Education Fund, which allows people to make donations to Tsinghua, and many other schools have their own foundations. And there are community foundations, which is the fastest growing type. Community foundations can be individual, can be systemic, can be corporate, but they have a smaller geographic remit. They are focused on a part of a province or a municipality. Now we can see the second chart, the bottom chart, and we can see that the money is also going up. But here, let me point out something of interest. The rate of the growth in the foundations is actually higher than the rate of growth of money going out, which means that there is more and more foundations involved in the distribution of philanthropic capital throughout China. That's good news. That means that more professionals, more experts, more people with business experience are getting involved with distributing philanthropic capital throughout China. In fact, this is unusual in Asia, and it is one of the great characteristics of Chinese philanthropy that it is becoming professionalized. Let's go on to the next slide. As Ronnie said, we did issue guides in 4 areas: health, environment, education, and poverty alleviation. Although, to be perfectly honest, only health and environment are finished so far. We're still working on the other 2. Why did we pick those? Well, those are basic human needs. Those are, without a doubt, the primary destinations of philanthropy, not only in China, but around the world, as Dr. Zhang explained in his opening remarks. How did we do this? How did we get this information? Well, we downloaded 5,000 annual reports from 2017 and 2018, which included information of over 40,000 different projects that were done in China in that time period. We consulted many types of media, including Gongyi Shibao, which is the Philanthropy Times. And we interviewed many, about 50 philanthropists and their staff, including the Secretary Generals of foundations, some of whom you'll hear from today. This project was a lot of work, and I'm just explaining that so everyone can appreciate what we've gone through to try to explain what is going on in China. Okay, so let's get into health. Here are 2 charts. When a foundation tells the government of China what they're funding, they have to tag or name the project. They have to say, this is an environment project, this is an education project, this is a health project. The chart on the left shows how they identified the project. In this case, healthcare comes up with as number 4th destination for philanthropy, or under 10%. But it's not exactly an accurate picture, because you can imagine how poverty alleviation, community development, public welfare can also include health. So what we did at CAPS is we looked at keywords. We did what's known as big data analysis across all the projects and used health words to see how many projects include health. And what we found was there are many more. So when we did that, healthcare comes up as number 2, or just under 28% of the total amount of expenditure goes to health. So health is a very important part of Chinese philanthropy. Where is the money going? What did we find when we looked at these projects? Here are some of our key findings. 1, health philanthropy, like all kinds of philanthropy in China, is linked with government priorities. Philanthropists in China know that the government is thinking ahead of all the ways to solve the problem in China, and they want to help. So their philanthropy works side by side, aligned and often jointly with government initiatives. This was very much true with health philanthropy, especially during the years 2015 to 2020, because that was when the government had the Poverty Alleviation campaign. You can imagine that when somebody gets very sick, they either remain in poverty or they're put into poverty when they have to spend for a catastrophic illness. That's why the government realized that a lot of philanthropic support could be channeled to those families who were suffering because they were both poor and had serious disease and illness. Second, we found that many corporate foundations find win-win strategies. And we think that's a great idea, because when a company aligns its interests with the community's interests, you create sustainable solutions. And later on during the panels, we're going to hear from some companies about how they have found some win-win solutions. Third, as Dr. Fong alluded, and as did Ronnie, Foundations are an important source of innovation, innovative solutions. This
那今天呢，我们的各位线上大咖啊，分别来自香港、北京、上海、深圳啊，所以呢有点卡。
ideas to become, whoops.
Today we are gathering speakers from Hong Kong, from mainland China, as well as other places. Let Ruth continue, please.
Oh, okay, thank you. Sorry. I think we are spread out all over the place, so the internet is somewhat unstable. I don't know where you lost me, but foundations are an important source of innovative solutions. Next, philanthropy works as a supplement to government programs. Sometimes philanthropists just give it more money to what's working for the government. But sometimes they work in an area that's underfunded, not because the government doesn't want to work in those areas, but the government cannot do all things all the time. So we identified 5 areas of special need in health in China: preventative care, screening, elderly, mental health, and the disabled. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about those. Next, we found that health philanthropy tends to be remedial and not preventative. Most of the work, most of the funding goes to people who are already sick. We think that as China develops its public health system and becomes more economically developed, a lot of this philanthropy can move to preventative. But for now, it's mostly remedial. And lastly, it's about Chinese values. We still see a very strong linkage with one ancestral homelands, giving back to where you came from. And that just shows the thousands of years of history and values of philanthropy in China. As I mentioned, there are 5 different areas where we saw really interesting work going on. During the panel discussion after I'm done, you're going to hear from some of these foundations about what they're doing. But let me just explain a few of them. Preventative care. Maybe and One Health and its chairwoman, Guo Meiling, run for-profit clinics all throughout China. But she realized that not everyone can pay for these kinds of checkups. And so she, Guo Meiling, uses her philanthropy and CSR to provide free checkups to the poor and those with special needs. So far, she's provided 50,000 checkups to those that cannot afford to pay. How about another example? Lifeline Express. Lifeline Express is a nonprofit based in Hong Kong, working throughout China, that really focused on ophthalmology and eye care. And they realized that many people were going blind because they have diabetes. I think everyone watching today knows that diabetes is a growing problem in China. And if you don't solve for diabetes, you can go blind. So what did Lifeline Express do? They put in place a screening program that checked now 35,000 people for diabetic retinopathy. And they found that 27% of those they checked had early stage. The good news is, if you find that someone has diabetic retinopathy early enough, you can cure it. If it's too late, it's too late, and they will go blind. Next example is one of those corporate win-wins that I was talking about, carried out by the My Home Foundation, which is the foundation affiliated with My Home Realty. They create housing complexes, and they realized that many of the elderly living in their housing complexes were lonely and didn't have enough money for food and didn't have services. So they put into place cafeterias with free meals, services for the elderly, support groups. Just in 2020, My Home Foundation helped 220,000 people who needed additional services. The next is mental health. Unfortunately, around the world, mental health is stigmatized, and that's true in China as well. But a terrific entrepreneur, Chu Chengting, realized through her own experience that there needed to be more support for people who are dealing with mental health issues. And they created the Flourish Magic School program. We are fortunate to have the Secretary General of the Ricci Foundation, Zhang Zhen, with us today, and she will explain much better than I could the terrific work that they are doing. And lastly, people with disability. This too is a stigmatized population, not only in China, but around the world. Fortunately, philanthropy can really make a difference. And here's a great example. In Guangzhou, the Guangzhou Tree of Life Disability Center has trained 800 people with disabilities such that they have found ongoing jobs and support. Now let's move to environment. Environment is pretty new, and there's not as much effort going, or there hasn't historically been. In fact, when you look at the numbers, you can see that environment only makes up a tiny portion of all philanthropic capital flow. Self-tagged, it's number 8, 2.69% of the foundations reporting to the Ministry of Civil Affairs said that their projects are working on environment. But when we did our keyword analysis, we actually found that the spend is even less. Just over 1% of all philanthropic capital goes to the environment. We think with President Xi's awareness and announcement about creating national parks and the integration of environment now in China's 5-year plan, this is certainly going to change and go up. There is no one in China or around the world that does not realize that China being able to conquer environmental issues is of key interest, not only to Chinese, but to everyone around the world. Within that small amount of environmental philanthropic projects, where's the money going? Well, almost half is going to biodiversity and habitat. That's about saving the pandas, saving the snow leopards, saving the dolphins, and the habitat in which they live. These other issues, fresh water, energy, climate change, land environment, these are hugely important issues, but you can see that the amount of capital flowing to them is less. And when you think about how small that number is, you realize much more can be done. This is a great opportunity for philanthropists to engage and really make a difference. Fortunately, some are, and we will have some examples in the panel later on after I'm finished. So what did we find? How does environmental philanthropy work in China? One, as I mentioned, it's dominated by a handful of individuals and foundations, but that may change as the government and society prioritizes the environment. Two, the interventions tend to be multifaceted and interdisciplinary. What do I mean by that? Well, you could imagine that if you wanted to do something in education, you could give money to a school. Or if you wanted to do something in health, you could give money to a clinic. But there's no equivalent of an entity when you want to help environmentally. You need to develop a project. It needs to be multifaceted and integrated, and it needs to include science. We need to understand what works when addressing environmental issues. That is why environmental NGOs, ENGOs in China play a really important role. They have the scientific background about what works when addressing environmental issues. We also see that environmental philanthropy tends to incentivize collaboration more than some other areas, mostly because the problems are big and the amount of philanthropic capital is small. So Alishan, the Sea Foundation, Paradise Foundation, and the China Environmental Grant Makers Association, all of whom helped with this project, are collaborative funding schemes. We are fortunate to have a representative from Alishan and the Sea Foundation with us on our panel this afternoon. And lastly, let me say another point. When it comes to health foundations, 7 out of 10 of them are systemic or linked with government, gongos. But in environment, the opposite number is true. 7 out of 10 are either individual or corporate foundations, meaning that individuals or corporations have taken the lead in addressing, from the philanthropic standpoint, environmental challenges in China. Okay, let me get to some examples. Biodiversity and habitat, as I just said, the largest one of the destinations of how people want to help when it comes to environmental philanthropy. And this example is from the Shanshui Conservation Center, which is endeavoring to help save the giant panda, clearly a national treasure. This organization has saved 150 square kilometers of panda habitat. And now with the decision to create national parks in China, this will certainly grow. Another example of philanthropy doing really important work is in fresh water. I think many of you know that fresh water is a challenge in China. In fact, according to the Ministry of Ecology and Environment, 23% of the water in the Pearl River Delta, which is where Hong Kong is and where I and Ronnie live and where CAPS is headquartered, is unusable for human contact. Not even just drinking, just to touch. That's why the Pearl River Watchers Action Network has engaged with 48 municipalities to create the River Watchers Action Network. These are people who volunteer and are trained to watch the river, make sure that dumping of toxins and pollution doesn't go in, help to test the water to keep it clean, and to organize community groups all along the river to make sure that it stays fresh and potable. The next project is one that I really love. Not that I don't like all of them. One is really interesting. Baofeng Energy, which is a state-owned enterprise, and it is an energy company, wanted to build solar panels in Ningxia province, which, as many of you know, is quite dry. They realized, however, that underneath the solar panels, there was more precipitation and that goji berries really grew very well. You can see in the picture, people cultivating goji berries underneath the solar panels. This project is so successful. There are 80,000 people working on maintaining the solar panels and cultivating the goji berries. And their income has risen to 40,000 RMB a year, which is much higher than it was before this project. Clearly a case of win-win-win. And lastly, I just want to mention what Laonio Foundation is doing. Laonio is one of the leaders when it comes to environmental philanthropy in China. And they have reforested 20 million square mu of forest, which around where the Olympics just took place last week. This project is supposed to capture 380,000 tons of carbon, remove it from the atmosphere over the lifespan of the next 30 years. That is very important and very exciting. I hope you can see, before we talk about next steps, how much we've done to understand Chinese philanthropy, how exciting it all is, and how much more work we can do if we work together. Every one of our speakers today is talking about working across the private sector, across philanthropy, across government, and with NGOs or social delivery organizations. We have an exciting future ahead of us. What can you do? Well, if you don't have a foundation, you can make a donation to an SDO, a social delivery organization, or set up a fund at a government-operated non-governmental organization. You can, if you have an individual foundation or a family foundation, to use your in-house expertise to develop innovative solutions and work with the government to pilot them so that we can understand better ways of solving our problems. If you're a corporate foundation, you can use CSR and shared value to find win-win types of efforts that will help the company to grow while at the same time addressing the community's needs. CAPS, we do advise a number of people and organizations, and we think that what's best is what's known as a financing spectrum. It's not just philanthropy, it's not just investments. There are many types of ways that you can fund impactful projects and even businesses. So it's important to think about the resources that you have, whether or not you have intellectual resources, financial resources, maybe you have time that you can share, and there are ways to deploy it. We suggest you find a trusted advisor who can help you, or a nonprofit or STO that wants to work with you, or approach the local government unit that's working in an area that you care about. We think it's very important to be strategic, be thoughtful, but also maintain your heart, because philanthropy is from the heart, and that's what really motivates us the most. I hope you realize that philanthropy with Chinese characteristics is unique, but it's interesting, important, and people are truly working with the heart and the mind. And we appreciate being able to study and research this exciting new, not so new, thousands of years old, but evolving area. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ruth Shapiro, for your report, and we congratulate you and your center on launching the China Issue Guide series. And from the CAPS official website, there's free to download publications. You're all welcome to click the linkage, and I know there will be further reports and series to be launched soon. And I'm sure with concerted efforts, we will be stepping on a chartered road for China philanthropy study. Without further ado, we will start the roundtable discussion. If anybody watching us virtually have any question, please feel free to submit your question and engage in. We all know that health philanthropy is a very key part of the philanthropy in China. Today, we're very happy to have Ruixi Hao, Senior Program Officer from Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, as a moderator of today's panel discussion. In the same time, we have panelists include Dr. Li Mingqiang, Board Member of Taikang Yicai Foundation, Mr. Chen Yuhong, Secretary General of Beizhao Charity Foundation, and Madam Zhang Jun from Secretary General of Roots Foundation to join in the panel discussion. Hand over to you, Madam Hao. Thank you. Do you all hear me well? Great. Thank you to the MC, and thank you to all the guest speakers, panelists joining us. I am very honored to serve as the moderator of today's panel discussion. As introduced by the MC, we have three panelists. Dr. Li Mingqiang from Taikang Yicai Foundation, Mr. Chen Yuhong, Secretary General of Beizhao Charity Foundation, as well as Madam Zhang Jun, Secretary General of Roots Foundation. Welcome to you all. I would love to also pay special tribute to CDRF, as well as CAPES Chairman Ronnie Chen, as well as Dr. Ruth Shapiro, for your hard work in the last 1.5 years to deliver such an insightful series to us. With 30 minutes of discussion and 10 minutes of Q&A, we really would love to focus on the main issues here. That is, what kind of role do health philanthropy play in health development in China? We have individuals from enterprise foundation, from individual foundation, and Congo to share their different perspectives. So without further ado, I'd like to open the floor for the panel discussion by giving you all a chance to introduce who you are. After your kind introduction, please respond to my first question. That is, in the early stage of establishment, how do you better position your own foundation to a particular area? And in that process, how do you combine identification of the project to your specialty and expertise? So I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Chen for starter. Thank you. With economic development and social progress, especially when China has triumphed on our battle against absolute poverty, common prosperity becomes the next goal. If we study on the poor groups, we know we don't have any absolute poor people anymore. So we now need to focus from poverty eradication to poverty alleviation, how we could better utilize multifaceted support to help these impoverished people so that they too could share the benefits of social progress. On the road of prosperity or common prosperity, our goal is to leave no one behind on the road of common prosperity. Complete poverty alleviation, eradication is strongly supported by the government, covered by the China's general benefits. In the whole process, I believe philanthropy should focus on the disadvantaged groups, the elderly, the weak people, and the marginalized people who had difficulty access to the social benefits, who had barriers from accessing to the social resources. And we should also care for the personalized needs. And I believe that's where our foundation can play a role with the social insurance coverage, with the medical care. I think more and more people are now being supported by the country. However, the last stop from home to hospital may be affordable to many people, but unaffordable to many people. So how do we solve the affordability issue of physically handicapped people, elderly people, has become the entry point of Beijiao Charity Foundation with the support of Heting Foundation. We had upgraded our services and program from just delivering free medical care to a comprehensive charitable program covering not only elderly care, free medical care, but also household medical care support. So we call that project a household or a family care program. The features of this program is it's a wide covering. In our community, we cover all the grids of our community to make sure the weak, the disadvantaged group can access to medical care. We have totally erased the the barrier exists between every household and hospitals. We also have had support to cover all people in Beijiao community can access to medical care so that no matter what and no matter how, people will have benefits from the social progress. Second, these programs deliver individualized medical care. That means we provide household doctors to every household in our community. We have filed some e-house record for all household. We provide medical and drugs for chronic disease patients to elderly. Number three, we have built a sustainable long-term support system. Heti Foundation is a trusted foundation. They provide us strong support in our community with the support of philanthropy. We not only solved the households to have access to medical care services, but also for people who migrated to our community. With our efforts, we made sure that people, even though staying at home, will be enjoying five-star quality medical care. We believe no one should be left behind. Everybody should be supported and respected. And our philanthropy and charity causes should particularly focus on the elderly, the physically handicapped, or the chronic disease patients. Any gentle touch or individualized support is a full heaven to them. Thank you. So well said. And you also have given us a full picture of your charity foundation. Now I'd like to hand over to Dr. Li Mingqiang on how you identify the needs and how you design your program to cater to that needs. Thank you. I am very happy to be invited. My name is Li Mingqiang. I am in charge of a strategy for Taikang Group. I also am a board member of Taikang Yicai Foundation. So both of my responsibilities actually overlap. You all know that Taikang Yicai Foundation was founded in the year 2018. So by this year, we only had a short history of 4 years, but last year we were awarded as a best performing foundation. We specialize on supporting education, on elderly, on the physically handicapped people. We have covered more than 50,000 elderly people, and we have supported more than 200 senior homes in China. And also on my role, I'm in charge of the strategy for Taikang Group. And this has offered me some convenience because in this role, I identified many opportunities.
For instance, in Taikang, we had very deep experiences in senior care as well as the senior shelter groups. So we found that those who have a great affordabilities is only accounting for a small proportion of the society. So how could we better share our expertise and experiences to larger group of population to help more people live a better life? That is why we entered into senior care parity area. Just as I said, we shared our experiences in serving the senior people by IT technologies to share the know-how and to promote the standards to senior homes across the entire country to help them improve the quality of their services to senior people. We also take senior care as a breakthrough point to enter into healthcare because senior people are the majority of the recipients of healthcare, and we do realize that we have to step up into the healthcare areas as well. In 2020, we, as a response to COVID-19, we did realize that there's quite a lot of demand for risk control and response. That is why we launched a special event so that we would be able to gather more resources, especially the COVID know-how, and to share those know-how with the wider society, especially the public health. How could we, share more knowledge and know-hows and to transform those great experiences and expertise to more to share them with more people. So that's basically what we did at Taikang Foundation. Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Lee. Again, you just gave us a very vivid example as to how you provide equal access to people, especially for those who are deprived of access to health care and senior care. So, Madam Zhang, do you have anything to share? Oh, yes, this is the Secretary of Roots Foundation. My name is Zhang Zhen. We are devoted to children's psychology needs. We want to promote the mental health of the children and to help them enjoy a better life. We have launched two key projects under two brand names. One is Lemon Project, and the other is a summer camp focused on children in order to boost their mental strength. We have served more than 330,000 children, covering 2,000 schools across China. By focusing our attention to children's mental health, is pretty much relevant to one of our key partners who suffered from severe depression in the past, and he did realize that it's very important to keep your mental health. That is why I set up a project to support the mental health of our children. He had some experiences in the past, and he did realize that there are a number of projects helping children to go back to school. However, the mental health of the children went unignored and unheeded of. Therefore, he visited a number of schools and teachers, running interviews with teachers, and they do realize that children's mental health is really important, and the mental issues is quite common amongst the children and pupil. So that is why there is a demand for philosophy projects regarding children mental health. So we've run quite a lot of research, and we do realize that depression is quite common. The prevalence rate is about 20% in rural areas, and about 57% of children who run a mental health do, later on being recognized, diagnosed as having mental issues. So something that confuses us at the very beginning is how do we better respond to such a great challenge and demand in the society? We attended some training, and we do have some feedback. Those children they got. Those teachers, they said that they benefited from those training and they have better understanding, but they do need some project or channel to help to reach out to the children, and maybe by helping those children at a school. Uh, so we got some inspiration, and after 2 years of experimenting, we came up with a quite successful model, which means that we develop products and programs to help those children and work together with teachers in the rural areas. Every semester, you have about 8 to 10 lessons with regard to mental health, and then we will run a review and to have some feedback. And based on those feedback, we could further optimize our program. So as time goes by, we gradually improve our project model, and to better respond to the challenge for mental health in their society, and they'll be able to better, cater for the needs of those children in need. Well, thank you, Madam Zhang, for your sharing of your great experiences. I think we have been quite motivated by hearing those, because you just mentioned that there are over 330,000 children who benefited. from Roots Foundation, and then also you have more than 50,000 senior people benefited from Taikang Foundation. And for those who are lack of access to healthcare, you are able to deliver the healthcare services to their homes and even to their communities. So I think this is relevant to each and every one of us. I hope to, move on by asking the next question as to, because we are quite limited by time, we only have about 10 minutes left. So when it comes to the value of charity work, I believe that the value of philanthropy work, I think, is the foundation and also the main source of motivation for doing our job. So I think all of you are, people in the front line, and you do have insights as to the origin and development of philosophy. So how do you measure the value of your work, and how do you make this value visible? So maybe we would direct this question to Mr. Lee first. Well, yes, if you're talking about a business is to make money and make profit, whereas for charity work, we're not pursuing profit. So we're looking for those who have limited affordability, and we're able to take on challenges that are more long-lasting. Um, for instance, we have this East High Foundation. This foundation supports people who often got ignored. For instance, who have chronic wounds or chronic issues. They probably have visited the hospital already, but when they got discharged from the hospital, they still have some issues later on, and they just have this. They just suffer from this chronic wounds or chronic health issues. This demand just went unheeded of by the public. So we were able to discover those issues and be able to put it on our agenda and do something to correct that. So as a business, you're operating in the market, but in the area or spaces outside of the market, we do need philanthropic projects to be able to provide a channel to send those resources to those who are in need and be able to gather together different resources and bring better goods. Another thing, when we talk about the values, of course, we want to provide values for the society. But as a business, why we want to do charity work is because we do have some thoughts to share with you. We think that in healthcare, in senior care, these are very relevant to people's livelihood. And we are doing something positive for the society. And in a way, we believe that this is a method for us to fulfill our social responsibility. And if you do not to do this, how could you build a reputation in the market and make people convinced of that the fact that you have a good heart, you want to make your business sustainable and be able to give back to the society. So I think this long-term mindset is very important if we want to make our business more sustainable. And I think what value can philanthropy projects generate to business? I mean, for Taikang specifically, we do engage C-suite people. I know, to my knowledge, some businesses they have this special CSR department, but at Taikang we have this senior people directly engaged in those philosophical projects, so that they have a good touch and a good feeling of the pulse of the market, and also those who are relatively underprivileged. So for those C-suite management people to get in touch with poor people or those who are in need, they would just be kept more motivated and be able to spend more time and get in touch with those people who are in need, and we believe that this is a more sustainable way to help the business go longer. So I believe that this is quite a significant sort of value where our, where Taikang as a business can benefit from doing charity work. Thank you. Thank you. Well said. I think doing philosophical work is a promise that businesses are making to the society, and it's a show of a commitment to their social responsibility. Well, thank you, Mr. Chen. And I think it's time for us to invite back Madam Zhang to share her thoughts on value. Um, of philosophy work. Well, yes, when we are delivering our projects, we want to give priority to children, especially those who are serving. To be more specific, I want to give you two examples. When we are developing the curriculum and programs, we want to make sure that no harm is incurred to the children, and we would run quite a lot of experiments and tests to make sure that our program is effective and does not do any harm to the children. Because, well, since day one, we set a principle is that we need to run evaluation. We would have some pilot sites to make sure that the program is working and it is efficient. And then once we are sure about that, we would scale the program up to cover more children so that we'll be able to make sure that we are actually indeed serving those children instead of causing harm to them. Uh, Innovation is another thing. We keep iterating the program and we keep improving the content. Since the demand is also constantly changing, and there will probably be more stakeholders we need to get involved with so that we'll make sure that we're able to cater for ever-changing challenges. And that is why we focus on innovation as well. Teachers work together with the Bureau of Education to support the mental health education for people. We keep updating our product so that we will be able to generate bigger and bigger value for the society. So to follow up on this note, you said that you're working together with your partners. So, like, if you have a new partner, can you just give an example? Like, when working locally, uh, you're coming from a big city, so how do you persuade your potential partner about the value of your project or your program in the first place? Well, actually, what we are trying to open doors is that we do have some local partners who have long-time experience, and they, were introduced to us by maybe people in a circle, and they've been running stuff and projects in the front line for many years. They have a strong network of like school headmasters, and by working together with them, we'll be able to get into more and more schools. So that's one way of cooperation. And another thing that we could do is that we could cater for the needs of the Bureau of Education. What kind of supports do they need? By running some research, we'll be able to see that they are looking for systematic contents and they want to have capacity building, especially their local team of teachers, so that will be able to support their work and do it more efficiently. So that is a win-win. We believe that during the entire process we are co-working instead of one asking the other to do something. So we are more of a supportive role, and the Bureau of Education, they take the dominating role and to run and deliver the project. So that is something that we have been doing.
Yes, great. First, we had a high quality program or project. Then we have a well-connected network. We provide long-term capacity building for the local practitioners. So very clear features. Thank you, Madam Zhang. So before we conclude, maybe Mr. Chen, you can continue to say a few words on how you work with your partners in Beijing. Thank you. Yes, for us to do our own charitable cause, we concern mostly about common prosperity because the remedy policy, the support, the medical care support from the government is more on the general public, the group. However, in our society and community, we have some particular individuals in dilemma or disadvantaged groups for some personal reasons. It's extremely difficult for them to access to the public services. So I think this is where the foundation comes in, and our value is to try to bridge the gap, the vacuum for these individuals in accessing to these public services. And I believe the government had some loopholes in covering every individuals in the social safety net. And for us, we specialize on providing personal-based and individualized medical care or support so that by helping this disadvantaged group, we transformed the fate of the whole family. So we talk about precise or targeted support. With our efforts, with we reaching a helping hand, these people who are left behind will rejoin the general public in achieving common prosperity. That's all. Thank you, Mr. Chen. So well said. I know that we have a interactive session, a Q&A session with our online audience. We have an audience who had a question to Mr. Chen. As a comprehensive foundation who does comprehensive project, I think you really need to coordinate resources, relationship among various partners. Can you please share some of your successful experience with us on how, on community level, you try to bridge the connections? Well, we don't really treat medical care project as medical care. We try to umbrella medical care, general needs, and elder senior people. So we work with them. We work with Heting Foundation. They are a trusted foundation. So with the trust as a basis, they provide us very strong support. All the related activities and programs we run here at the foundation without the support from Heting Foundation is extremely difficult. Third point, we need to utilize the resources from the government so that together we deliver good programs. Thank you so much. I know we're approaching the end of our panel discussion, so one final question to all three panelists. You know, COVID has really transformed the way we work, live. So to three panelists joining us today, can you please say a few words on how the pandemic has shifted the way you work at your foundation and how you really adapt to the new changing dynamism? Will the COVID-19 pandemic alter or help your foundation to adjust your future work? Thank you. Let me start first. Yes, the pandemic has really shifted every aspect of our life. You know, according to United Nations it has pointed out that the mental health of young people in the world, including the kids, had been impacted. Ever since we have resumed our classroom teaching, we see a rising number of kids suicide. You can see the report from the Ministry of Education on how the government stressed the importance of students' mental health. We can really feel that starting from the second half of the year 2021, our mental health education program had been so popular, and many local level institutes are approaching us. And I think we need to continue to emphasize the importance of kids' mental health. And we have issued report and events last year so that we can arouse more attention from the insiders on providing support or for synergy to promote the mental health of kids or children to be wide covering. So yes, the pandemic has shifted the way we work, become a simple initiator to become a network initiator where we build networks so that everybody can provide support for mental health. Mr. Chen, can you please also say a few words on that question? Yes, pandemic has had certain impact on our work. However, for the individualized medical care or support, we really utilized the information technology today to deliver our project virtually, to have less face-to-face communication, to have less cross-infection. We will soon promote a remote medical care program to better respond to the COVID-19. Okay, marvelous. Dr. Li Mingqiang. Actually, we have had a dedicated fund working with Harvard University and other international organizations. We work with the medical schools from the US in promulgating knowledge on COVID-19. I think when people talk about the pandemic, they often refer to influenza 100 years ago. But that one was really far away, and sometimes we date back to the era of SARS. That reminds us that knowledge and professional knowledge really matters when we respond to COVID-19. So the COVID-19 has reminded us of how we should really summarize the experience of how we respond to COVID-19 for future generations. Also in the elder care sector, which had been really sabotaged by COVID-19 as the early occurrence of cases were found in some senior homes. I think on that line, we can do more on experiences and lessons learned to provide insight for future generations. I hope we don't have next pandemic coming. However, if unfortunately we do, then we and our efforts will help the next generations to have some replicable and pragmatic solutions. Yes, of course, we should not only aim at the next 10, 15 years, but the next centennial. So I know there are many questions proposed by our online audience. Eric, who asked a question on emission reduction, and also Dr. Yu Chen, who asked a question on the performance assessment. And there is another audience, Ruby, who asked a question on sustainable growth, but we don't have any time to respond to you one-on-one now. thank you for your support, and we will be responding to you afterwards. I think today we have had a very in-depth discussion on COVID-19, on foundation, and our programs. I want to stress that little by little, with our persistence, we come to today and we salute our success. And I really think there's more to do. I'd like to say thank you to not only our three panelists, but everybody who stand on the front line for philanthropy. I hope we can together create a better future. Hand over to you, moderator. Thank you to all panelists for your very insightful discussion. Now I'd like to hand over to Mr. Huang Haoming, Vice Dean of CGPI, as our moderator to talk about environmental philanthropy. Joining Mr. Huang, we have Madam Chen Yimei, Secretary General of Bank Foundation, Fang Zhi from Vice Secretary General of Town Environment Protection Foundation, and Dr. Yang Biao from C Foundation. Hand over to you, Dean Huang. Thank you to the MC for your kind introduction. In the interest of time, I will not introduce our panelists once again. I know our MC has already introduced all of you. Please keep your camera open. There are more than 100,000 people who are viewing from the Phoenix platform. So what a marvelous viewership. So on this panel discussion, we focus on environmental philanthropy, the relationship between nature and human being. I'd like to thank CAPES, the Center for Asian Philanthropy and Society, as well as CDRF, China Development Research Foundation, for making me the moderator. I come from CGPI. I am very happy to see that in the past, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has generous support to CGPI. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Madam Chen Yimei to give us an introduction on how Bank Foundation had positioned yourself among all foundations in China. Thank you. Thank you to the moderator's kind introduction, and thank you to the host for the invitation. Bank Foundation is a enterprise foundation founded in the year 2008. Ever since our establishment as of today, we have had a total philanthropic expenditure of more than 750 million. We were registered under Ministry of Civic Affairs, and starting from the year 2018, Mr. Wang Shi had served as the chairman who had drafted a 5-year action plan for Bank Foundation. Sustainable community building had been our strategic direction.
Community development, as well as environmental work are our core focus of work. So the intersection of these two is social environment, especially the community waste management. So we see it as a flagship project that is community waste management. So especially for those, living wastes, how do we better manage them? And second is the climate change. We hope to support the work by setting up a China corner at the climate change summit to engage more business in China in the work of climate change combat. And also, since since China has set up our carbon targets, we go pretty much in line with this direction. By adding the work of climate change response to our work, we want to help to build zero carbon community as a pilot work. So as an foundation, actually we have two features as an organization. One is facing the future and dare to be number one. So this is the original thoughts of Mr. Wang Shi, our foundation, the founder of Vanke, and the second is by way of supporting nonprofit organizations and research institutes to help support their work. We had helped over 300 institutions across the country for about 400 projects covering almost each and every provinces in China. And we are also trying to empower the wider society by delivering our value along the value chains in the ecosystem so that people would have a better awareness as to the community environment. I would also like to talk about CIGA, which is a China Environment Supporting Network. I was elected as the co-chair for China Environmental Grantmaker Alliance, and we have a new partner joining the network. We hope to make sure that we are able to make contributions to the environmental issues in China, to share the information so that we'll be able to encourage the work with regard to environmental management. Well, thank you very much, Chen Yimei. I think Vanke Foundation, as what you have been said, was very right to the point because you'll be able to engage the work not only in your own industry, but also many other stakeholders as well. And as displayed by the report earlier on is that the percentage of environmental philanthropy to the entire, work of philanthropy is rather small for the time being. So I think maybe we could give the floor to Mr. Fang Zhi from China Environmental Protection Foundation. Well, thank you very much for inviting me. My association was established in 1993 with the support from the then Minister of Environment. And this organization is registered with the Ministry of Civil Affairs and managed and led by the government. Well, our principle is that we want to protect the environment and benefit the human being at the same time. Our early establishment was in 1993, and we have raised 1.5 billion RMB with an expenses about 1.2, 1.3 billion RMB. Environmental education was our first and foremost area to raise people's awareness, and later on we promote our work through environmental evaluation, environmental monitoring, as well as forestation, as well as biodiversity protection, habitat, and species protection. And also later on, since last year, we enter into the area of low carbon, green living, green logistics, green mobility, etc. Our China Environmental Protection Foundation also supports ESCAP as well as UN environmental program for a long time, and we made it into the top 100 global think tank list for a number of years. So funding work is quite pivotal to our organization. We're supporting quite a number of research institutes as well as environmental organizations, nonprofit organizations. Our goal is to establish a platform which is open, green, and sharing. As a government-led foundation, we do have an advantage because we do have systematic and establishment advantages that we can share with other stakeholders by serving as a platform for all the stakeholders. I hope that we'll be able to, you know, to bridge more people together. We want to be a bridge between the government, between organizations, as well as the funding. Well, yes, China Environmental Protection Foundation is a nationwide foundation, and they have been excellent in managing the relationships with the government as well as the businesses. Now, we also have Mr. Yang Biao, who is from C Foundation. Uh, so I think there's a name change to this C Foundation, but anyways, we know who you are. So Mr. Yang Biao, your time. Would you mind telling us your value proposition and what you are doing? Well, thank you very much for the opportunity. Well, for C Foundation, the official name is the Beijing Entrepreneurship Environmental Foundation, and this was first established in 2008. And then in 2014, it became a mutual foundation, an open foundation, and we probably had achieved something and have been recognized by the Ministry of Civil Affairs, and we were then categorized as a 5A um, foundation focusing on environmental protection. Structure-wise, we composed with the 5 parts. In Alashan, in Inner Mongolia, we trying to do some work in terms of forestation in the desert, desert areas and Gobi areas, trying to shrink the sizes of deserts. And we have recovered about 70% of the uh, desert areas, covering about 140 or 150 mu area, so that we'll be able to, build more trees and restore deforestation. We are also protecting and restoring the underground water. Starting from Inner Mongolia, we are expanding our presence to the rest of the country as we go along. Environmental protection and ecosystem protection, we have diversified our work to, for instance, birds protection, especially the migration of birds in East Asia and Australia. We're covering over 100 habitats for birds. And in the southern west areas, we're covering animals such as Asian elephants, giant panda, as well as some monkey species. So this is about species protection. We name it as the Noah's Ark. We're also covering fishes in Yangtze River areas, dolphins, as well as other smaller fish species to the estuary of Yangtze River. We have green logistics, we have waste management. We had also, since the last year, conducted some maritime projects, especially when it comes to species that are, suffering from extinctions, from pollutions. And we are helping businesses um, at their budding stage and development stage when they want to do charity work. We have supported more than 700 partners to support their environmental work. Our focus is to support the businesses in their work in protecting the environment so that they'll be able to do better and raise the awareness of environmental protection for the general society. Well, yes, C Foundation is now held as a great foundation and has been very attractive to business partners. Now let us, circle back to Vanke Foundation. So you just mentioned that you had a strategic SWIFT. Specifically, you're focusing on community management and community development, which has caught my attention for a long time. We actually had invited you to deliver a speech at China Global Philosophy Institute. So, if you don't mind, would you mind sharing with us what you have learned in the past? I think since we're time limited, please limit your speech to 3 minutes only. Oh, sure, of course. Community is a big topic. Why we want to focus on community is, first of all, community is a physical space and it has people living in there, meaning that as a philosophy organization with limited resources, we have to focus our work uh, so that we could be radical in solving the issues we want to solve. Therefore, we decided to choose community as a space, as a physical space to conduct our work. That's one thing. And second is waste management. Well, from the governmental perspective, people have been talking about sorting wastes for more than 2 decades, but nobody can say that they've been there already. Um, there have been problems and issues here and there when you're trying to manage the wastes and sorting the wastes. Uh, Mr. Wang Shi had tried and failed for multiple times. And with Vanke Foundation, we just hope that we could use a more systematic and comprehensive approach to tackle the issue of community waste management. Because we as human beings, as individuals, we live in a community here and there. The school that we go to, the office building that we go to, is a community. And as an individual, you have multiple identities. You probably are a resident in your living house and maybe you're generating wastes and whether or not those wastes are harming your health. You're also a citizen to your community and you have to protect the environment that you're living in and you have to make sure that you're protecting your family members, your neighbors and your coworkers. So as a citizen, you do have to shoulder your responsibility. Sorting your wastes is first step only. And another thing I want to talk about is that when you're living in a community, you're also at the same time a consumer. As a consumer, you have a power to influence production. For instance, when we're talking about green society, we're talking about uh, carbon targets, we're talking about zero carbon community. So as a consumer, you do have a power of influence how things are being produced. Maybe I choose to live green. We could use less water. We could use less packaging materials. Probably we could grow something in a community. So that would be beneficial to to the community as well. So that is why we think that you as an individual, you should be proactive in your daily activities and share the responsibility, shoulder your responsibility. And as an individual, you're not alone. you are subject to the community management mechanism, and probably we should have a volunteer network. You have the self-governing organization for that community. So I think, yes, great point.
Well said. Yes, we're all citizens living in our own community. You know, when I live in Shenzhen, I lived in the subsidized house from the government, and it was managed by bank. And I have to comment on the great performance of your community management work. And I also know that Rui Ying had also done similar things. Now I want to move on to Mr. Fan, China Environmental Protection Foundation. How do you deal the relationship with the government? What are some tricks? What are some reminders? Thank you. As we are directly under and affiliated to the Ministry of Environmental Protection, so we really are having first-hand information of policy updates from Chinese Ministry of Environmental Protection. And we also have built a platform, online platform, where the division of the regulation will support our work. We have hosted 9 training sessions in Renmin University and other universities. We invited procurates and law related officials to understand one another on understanding the works, the overlapping, to help them to understand what the government holds as right, what are the environmentalist beliefs. So I think our specialty is to bring every side together as a network. Also, on NGO forum, we have invited UN officials, Chinese government, Chinese entrepreneurs together for in-depth dialogue. So helping people of different perspectives to know one another is key for our work, because some countries and some people, they may not know properly of what charity or philanthropy is, and they sometimes will stand in the way of our work. So I think dialogue will make our work easier. Now, government can play the dominant role, supported by the private sector and also participated by the general public. Every party are indispensable stakeholder. So the engagement of the government is a must, and support from the government is also a must. So our projects, as long as it involves local people's livelihoods, we would invite the local government to be a judge to evaluate the success of our project. I think that will involve the government and mobilize them so that we can together build a more equitable society. So when you deal with the government relation, what kept you awake at night? What are the pain points? Well, there are no headache issues. I think different governments at different development phase have various understanding of philanthropy. Some government may have full support, while others, they not only not engaging any project, but also prevent you from issuing any invoice. So I think the recognition of the government is a sign of the openness of the government, and the more developed the economy is, the more open the environment will be. I know Dr. Yang Biao from C. He organized hundreds of entrepreneurs in the work in ALXA and the migratory birds and the deforestation issue in Inner Mongolia. These are so well done. How do you deal with the relationship between the entrepreneurs and the foundation? You know, the entrepreneurs of SEE, there are different means of participation. For example, in the capacity building, some entrepreneurs are there as advisors. In other environmental projects, the entrepreneurs will provide donation or charitable giving, and others will contribute to the writing of the report or the governance. The entrepreneurs of SEE, they engage in a green supply chain project. It is a very special project of SEE. You know, the global carbon emission are mostly contributed by the industrial and manufacturing sector. So in the year 2016, we realized that the green sustainable growth of all businesses are vital for the climate change issue. So we have to deal and optimize the supply chain in a global scale. By that, we can also help the private sector businesses to deliver their ESR. So we have promoted several projects, first in real estate property development sector, second in electronic manufacturing sector, and our program in the real estate property development sector started really early stage. We work with the China's Property Developers Association, whose members cover major developers like Vank. Together, we promote such a whitelist. Today, there are 374 upstream businesses across 12 categories being covered by the whitelist. And with the experts' study, we screen from the whitelist the businesses who does great work on green supply chain building. And in our online database, you can also see the green businesses from the green list out of the white list. So if you want to do any procurement, you can buy from the businesses covered by the green list or white list, and that will help you to realize a green supply chain. By doing so, we really have facilitated the businesses to become a environmentally friendly company. In the last few years, when we introduced our experience, we used the Green Supply Chain Project, especially when we communicated with UNDP. They particularly favor such project because only in China will we be able to organize such a scale of businesses to participate in the green supply chain campaign. Such a wonderful project. In the interest of time, we cannot hear full of the story. So I think in the interest of time, we will now open the third round for our panel discussion. We have talked about problems, issues, especially the dual carbon goals proposed by President Xi. So from the capacity building perspective, Madam Chen Yimei, what do you think should be done to mobilize more players to really deliver the dual carbon goals? I think it is a fundamental issue for philanthropy, and it is relevant for the dual carbon goals. Capacity building is such a key. In Vank Foundation, we really attach great importance to empowerment and capacity building. no matter what project we engage, we really would love to empower the partners with resources and information. So over the years, at Vank Foundation, of all the programs we deliver, in the budget, we will include the expenditure on capacity building. As long as we believe that entity has a need, they can really put on the budget, and our foundation will stand behind them. Also, after China has introduced the dual carbon goals, I think it provides all of us, the staff at Vank Foundation, myself included, a great pressure. Why? Because our past knowledge system was quite limited. Despite of our efforts, 7 to 8 years of work on climate change, Vank was also one of the early members joining the Green Supply Chain campaign. However, on community level, how do we mobilize everybody to realize the dual carbon goals? For example, community level philanthropy and community level environmental friendly philanthropy is also difficult. And I have to really speak highly of Mr. Wang Shi, who served as our chairman of the foundation. So from last year, we started to require all of our staff to have training and study on climate change and the carbon goals. We provided them with training, workshops. So starting from the employees ourselves, everybody had to encompasses carbon goals in their daily work. In addition to that, the communities we supported also are required to generate more understanding of dual carbon goals. Last year, we were very happy to work with Qianhe Foundation, where we engage on a climate adaptability awareness improvement program in Pearl River Delta. With that study, climate adaptability awareness is such a new term in China. But without the fancy name, I think everybody really have adaptation to climate. For example, how do you respond to the heat fever or to some extreme precipitation? So with Vank's project, we really want to improve residents' awareness on climate adaptation, capacity building. A great summary. Thank you. Now I'd like to hand over to Mr. Fang Zhi. Your foundation is becoming a leader among all players in environmental philanthropy, and how you differ from Vank Foundation.
Thank you. So for the carbon targets, dual carbon targets, we hope to first of all work together with research institutes in China so that we could work together to promote and advocate for green mobility or green batteries or green logistics. Actually, we join hands with top-tier research institutes. For instance, the research institute associated with the Ministry of Transportation. Every year, we could cover over 100 cities in China. We have been supporting for many years cleaning automobile technology development so that we could achieve green logistics. And we had also been supporting more than 100 projects who have been quite excellent in developing technologies for low carbon mobility. We have training activities for more than 2,000 a year. Next step, we are also providing fundings as well. For instance, for Alibaba Foundation, we are setting up low carbon foundations to support low carbon living. The goal is to enable more people to get involved in our activities and to change their lifestyle to make it more environmentally friendly and be able to have more greeneries in our living space. Not only that we do ourselves, but also advocate and to promote such activities to the wider society and get more people involved. For instance, we have this Climate Change Research Institute, Research Center. We do have this network of stakeholders who constantly working together with us. So yes, C Foundation, you have so many partners and stakeholders. You have about 7,000 partners. So how do you reach this scale? And do you have any experiences to share with us? Well, thank you. I personally can say this for sure. First of all, on the operational side, SEE Foundation, we serve as a platform in order to help with dual carbon targets. We have established a strategy within the climate change framework. For instance, the verification of carbon emission. Second is the carbon target setting. We developed some carbon-related projects, for instance, forest carbon sink projects. We established the first transaction for green blue carbon sink in China. Yes, we tap on the power of market by using ECS standard. And with all this platform and prerequisite met, we're able to enable transactions amongst our partners. They'll be able to get involved in and there's also some organizations who do verification of carbon, review of carbon emission, and etc. We get into touch with listed companies who want to issue ESG report. We serve as a platform to put together all those resources, the demand and supply, and they actually want to conduct a transaction on carbon. We're able to match them together, and also we will be able to verify the carbon emission activities and to help with the capacity building as well. Just as I said before, we are able to help the stakeholders institution-wise. For instance, we are able to help those stakeholders to deliver their goals by serving as a platform. Well, yes, I am sorry I have to cut you short as we're limited by time. Well, yes, the national environment protection policy-wise, we serve as a think tank to them, and we invite experts to deliver lectures to help people better understand and decipher the dual carbon target policy, and also give them some fundings to make them able to survive in a new environment. Well, yes, that's really valuable. Well, yes, I think we have a lot to say, but unfortunately we're limited by time. Maybe we could give maybe 20 seconds to each of our speaker to talk about their hope for the future, especially with regard to carbon emission and carbon reduction. So lady first, Madam Chen first. Everyone has the responsibility to protect the environment, which has no boundary. Mr. Fang, I hope that everybody can live a green life. Every business can have a green logistic and green supply chain. Well, yes, green consumption, green production, and green everything. Well, thank you. Mr. Yang from C Foundation, any last words from you? Well, I hope that you will be able to identify your direction to go under the dual carbon policy and be able to thrive better against the new backdrop of environmental protection. Well, thank you. That's a great philosophy. Well, yes, I think in the interest of time, we have to stop here. But I really have to say, we have a great group of panelists with 4 rounds of questions and answers. We do generated some very nice sparkles and ideas. I want to say, by way of a conclusion, is that for greener water and for blue sky, I hope that we could continue our effort. Well, thank you very much for the great discussion. And now please allow me to invite Acting Director and Program Officer of Ford Foundation, Madam Gu Qing, to give us a short summary and give us a closing remark for this conference. Well, thank you very much. I think we are doing actions for the greater goods. I am really honored to represent Ford Foundation to attend this China Philosophy Conference, the launch of China Issue Guide series. So today, I believe this conference bears significant importance because it is an in-depth discussion with regard to evidence-based research in the philosophical work, both in and outside of China. We're really honored to be able to support the cooperation between the Center for Asian Philosophy and Society and China Development Research Foundation. So when CAPS first proposed the idea of developing a China issue guide to Ford Foundation, we identified the special and unique value of it because it focused on key areas such as poverty alleviation, education, health, and environment. So it is not only about giving us a summary of the achievements that we have been making, but also provide itself as a guide for philosophers to provide guidance for the future work. What should we pay our attention to? What should we focus? What should be our next step? And how do we make this philosophy work more effective? Second, I want to say that this is a well-attended conference. We have experts. We have general secretaries from famous foundations in China. We do have a very nice content and discussion. What I see the most from our discussion just now is that the value of cooperation. And I also like to say that we are very lucky and fortunate that we have help. Just a quote from the report issued by CAPS. So I think that as we are drawing a conclusion to this conference, I have a few points to make, especially to the experts and also those attendees from the internet. My finding number one is that we are forming a circle, an ecological circle for the philosophy work in China, and all the stakeholders are having more and more interactions and be able to mutually benefiting one another, are supplementing one another. For instance, we could identify optimal ways of cooperation and support each other, either a government, foundation, or a business. And also in China, people are more and more engaged in philosophical work. The government policy, for instance, common prosperity, are providing bigger space for the growth of philosophy work in China. while we are responding to government policy, I think businesses, foundations, and philosophists, they have more space to decide how and what they want to do in terms of generating goods for the society. And there is great demand for philosophy work. Second is that I think international exchange is indispensable for the development of Chinese philosophy work because we know that both CAPS as well as the CDRF, we are putting the philosophy work of China in the wider stage of global philosophy, and by drawing experiences and angles of research from the international research will be able to be more aspired and be more innovative in terms of doing our job in the future. And I hope that in the future there will be more international exchanges, and I also hope that the great experiences will be seen by the wider community in the world. And of course, at the same time, I take the privilege of being a speaker here to pose two questions. My first question is, how far are we from the data support from data-based research? In the appendix number 1, probably you could have a look at it in greater details, the methodology and data sources of data. We have great effort made by Dr. Ruth and her team. From 0 to 1, there is a database that covers over 40,000 projects supported by various foundations in China. So we really hope that this is a great chance for you to think about the value of running the value that you can draw out of this great database in terms of the philosophy industry in China. So that's one thing. And second is that I totally agree with the funding there presented in the conclusion is that what is the role of philosophy work in China? Well, no, is it trying to solve social problems, or is it just serving as a supplementation to the loopholes in the system? I believe that this is highly relevant to, for instance, the healthcare, because, are we trying to be remedial or are we trying to be preventive in terms of diseases? Just as what people said that in order to solve the issue of health, you have to be preventive and to have health education to raise the awareness rather than, giving people drugs and treatments. So I think this question is really valuable and deserves our great thinking. How could we do more work in preventing the quote-unquote diseases from happening rather than solving and treating the diseases after it had occurred? So we should probably be more scientific in calculating the investment and expenditures as well as the return of our philosophy resources. If we could just be one step forward and to act earlier on in preventing those issues from happening, will it be more effective? I think this is something, just as food for thought for everyone. And last but not least, I'd like to say a big thank you for our speakers as well as panelists for your inspirational work and sharing. Once again, I'd like to say a big thank you to China Development Research Foundation and CAPS, especially the chair of CAPS, Mr. Chen, Ronnie Chen, and also Dr. Ruth. Thank you very much for your great work. And thank you very much for hosting these conferences to show us the value that you have generated. For the Foundation, we are more than honored to get involved in this, and I hope to be able to support the Foundation network and also the philosophy work of those in China and in Asia. Once again, a few words about Ford Foundation. We are committed to the development of China philosophic work and also to support the improvement of the ecosystem here by supporting research and research activities. We hope that the China philosophic work can bring more and greater goods to the society as a whole. And this event is a very meaningful one and is very successful. I hope that this can serve as a big start to the year of 2022, spring of 2022, and we'll be able to, go a long way. Well, thank you very much, Madam Gu. I think this is the end of China Philanthropy Conference and launch of China Issue Guide. I thank you for attending, and I also thank those speakers and panelists. Thank you for your support, and I hope that we'll be able to see each other very soon. And feel free to scan the QR code to download the report here, and also stay in tune for our future activities. See you soon.